Even though this woman might look like she was completely in control of the situation because of her skill, she was about to become the best example I have of why you can never ignore the warnings in a national forest. You're watching The Last Walk, and this is one of the most frustrating cases I have ever found, and the deadliest warning of them all ended up being the one you would ever expect. It was the afternoon of the 13th of July, 2019, in the Tonto National Forest. Out in the raw desert country, miles from the nearest trailhead, the heat coming off the bare rock in waves, when a 25-year-old woman stood alone on the wrong side of a wash that an hour before had been bone dry and was now a wall of moving brown water, her pack and nearly all of her water gone with it. A storm sliding off to the east, the clouds already breaking apart and the desert heat pressing back in, and nobody who could rescue her knew that she was stranded out there at all. Kayla Jen Nibbler was 25 years old, and she was not the kind of person you would expect this to happen to. She was fit, she was stubborn in the good way as well as the bad, and she had spent the last couple of years working through a personal list of the hardest desert routes in Arizona, one brutal trip at a time. She filmed most of them for a small but real following, a few thousand people who liked that she was not a professional or a sponsored athlete, just a regular young woman with a 9 to 5 who kept doing hard things on her days off. She was very good at it. She trained for these trips, she knew how to read a trail, she had turned back before on days that felt wrong, and the people who knew her would tell you she was one of the most determined people they had ever met. That determination is the whole story. It had carried her up 100 hard climbs, and it was the exact thing that would not let her stop on the one day that stopping was the only thing that could have saved her. And none of it was really about fame. People who knew her said the challenge began as something personal, a way to prove to herself she could still do hard things after a rough couple of years, and the following came later, almost by accident. It is easy to watch someone film themselves in a dangerous place and write them off as reckless or vain. Kayla was neither. She was a serious person chasing a serious goal, which is exactly why the warnings slid off her the way they did. This is the part that matters. Kayla was not careless in the way people picture. She did a lot of things right. She kept herself in real shape, she carried a small first aid kit and a headlamp, she usually studied the route the night before, and she almost always let someone know she was going out. The problem was never that she did not know the rules. The problem was that she had gotten so good and gotten away with so much that she had quietly started to believe the rules bent around her. And the few gaps she did leave, not quite enough water for the kind of heat that was coming, no way to call for help without a cell signal, and no one who knew her exact route, were the specific gaps that this one day would find. Let me be fair to her, because she was no clueless tourist who wandered off a parking lot. She was skilled, she was experienced, and that's the part that unsettles me the most about it. Arizona is a place that warns you constantly. The trailheads out here are covered in signs. The heat, the water you need to carry, the flash floods, the closures, and most people going right past them have learned to treat all of it as background noise. The warnings are always there, and the vast majority of the time, nothing happens, and that is exactly what makes them so easy to ignore. Kayla had gone past 100 of those signs and come home fine every single time. That is the trap. 100 trips that all end well do not teach you that the warnings are wrong, but they slowly teach you that they are not really meant for you. Every warning she blew past and survived did not feel like luck to her. It felt like proof. Proof that she was tougher than the sign, smarter than the forecast, more capable than the people who turned around. Each time nothing went wrong, the voice telling her to be careful got a little bit quieter. It is the same process that gets seasoned drivers killed on roads they have driven 1,000 times. Familiarity starts to feel like safety, and the two are not the same thing. The route she picked that summer was not one of the popular, crowded trails. It was a little-used official trail out in the backcountry of the Tonto National Forest, a long, hard push to a remote overlook that almost nobody bothers with in the heart of summer, and that was the entire appeal. Anybody could do the easy, popular routes in spring, when the weather is kind and the parking lot is full. Doing something remote and brutal, alone, in the worst heat of the year, and filming every step of it was the kind of thing that set her apart from every other account posting the same crowded spots. She had a screenshot of the route on her phone, a rough plan in her head, and a promise to her followers that she was finally going to knock this one off her list. There were clips of her the night before, laying her gear out on the floor, talking fast and happy, telling everyone this was going to be the hardest one yet and that the view was going to be worth all of it. In one of those night before clips, Kayla reads a comment out loud from a follower, asking if it is really safe to go out on a route like that alone in July. She laughs and says people are way too scared of these trips if you are actually prepared for them, that being ready is the whole point, and that she would always rather be the one who went. She tells them to keep watching, because tomorrow was going to be a big one. The morning she left, Kayla texted her closest friend from the car, the way she always did before a big trip. She wrote that she was parked and ready, that it was already hot, but she had a good head start on the day, and that this was the one she had been waiting for. Her friend texted back to be careful in that heat, and Kayla answered that she would be fine, that she had done worse, and that she would send photos from the top the second she got a bar of service. Here is the thing people from outside Arizona do not understand about a national forest like the Tonto. Most of it is not shady pine woods. It is close to 3 million acres of raw Sonoran desert and rugged backcountry, bare rock and thorn and dry washes, where, in summer, the temperature out on the open ground regularly climbs past 110. There is very little shade and almost no reliable water anywhere. Out there, water is not a comfort item. It is the only thing keeping you alive, and it goes faster than most people expect. In heat like that, an active person can burn through more than a liter every hour, and even 6 liters can vanish faster than anyone expects, and there is nowhere to refill and nothing to hide under. Help is a long way off, too. The nearest paved road can be hours away on foot, and a rescue team, once anyone even knows to send one, has to cross that same ground in that same heat before reaching you. Distance out here is not measured in miles, it is measured in how much water you have left. And the cruel thing is how normal it all feels, right up until it does not. The morning is pleasant, the trail is quiet, you feel strong. There is no single dramatic moment where the desert announces that it has decided to kill you. It just keeps taking a little more out of you than you put back, hour after hour, until you are already in serious trouble and never noticed the line you crossed. And in July, there is a second danger stacked right on top of the first. It is monsoon season, when huge storms boil up in the afternoons and dump an unbelievable amount of rain in minutes. That rain does not soak into the hard desert ground, it runs straight off, and it all funnels into the dry washes and canyons and turns them, in the space of a few minutes, into deadly flash floods. The part that kills people is that the storm does not have to be anywhere near them. Rain falling miles away, up on higher ground, can send a wall of water down a wash that is bone dry and sunny where you are standing. People are swept away in Arizona almost every year, doing nothing more than standing in the wrong dry stream bed at the wrong moment. Locals grow up with one rule for it: never camp in a wash and never cross one that is running, and every summer someone from out of town learns why the hard way. The water comes with almost no sound at first, and then all at once, and by the time you can hear it coming, it is usually already too late to climb out. None of those warning signs are there by accident. Every one of them exists because someone ignored the same danger before and did not come back. I could never make people believe this until they see it for themselves, but a national forest can cook you and drown you on the very same afternoon. The warning started before she even took a single step. The trailhead that morning had everything posted that you could possibly ask for. There was the standard sign about carrying enough water and the danger of pushing out into extreme heat. There was a fresh notice that the National Weather Service had an excessive heat warning in effect for the whole region that day, along with a flash flood watch for the afternoon. There was a permanent sign, the kind they only bother to put up where people have actually died, telling everyone to stay out of the washes during storms. And there was a Forest Service advisory, because a storm a couple of weeks earlier had washed out sections of the upper part of the route. It strongly recommended that people stay off that stretch until crews could repair it. The trail technically remained open, so anyone who continued did so at their own risk, and pushing straight through that kind of warning was exactly what Kayla had trained herself to do. On top of every one of those signs, there was a person. A volunteer trail steward was at the trailhead that morning, one of those weekend regulars who check in with people heading out and try to talk the unprepared ones into waiting for a better day. He spoke to Kayla directly. He told her plainly that it was already dangerously hot, that a strong storm was in the afternoon forecast, and that the upper part of the route was washed out, and the Forest Service was advising people to avoid that section. He mentioned that crews had been called out to help people in trouble on that same ground in previous summers. He remembers that she was polite and friendly, that she thanked him for looking out for her, and that she shouldered her pack and went on past him anyway. A person looked her in the eye and told her not to go. I keep coming back to that because in her situation, it's so easy to smile, thank them, and step past them thinking you knew better. There is a clip from that morning of Kayla panning her camera slowly across the wall of warning signs at the trailhead, laughing about how the desert really does not want anyone to have any fun out here. She jokes that if she stopped for every sign in this state, she would never get anywhere, and then she turns the camera on her own face, grins, and says she did not drive 3 hours before sunrise just to read a sign and go home. A little way up the route, she posted one last short clip while she still had a bar of signal, a slow sweep across the empty country ahead of her with not another soul in sight. She tells her followers that this is the whole reward, that everyone else is crowded onto the easy trails while she has all of this to herself, and that the people who listen to every warning never get to see anything like it. It was the last thing she would manage to post before the signal gave out for good. A few miles in, with the sun really starting to bite, Kayla passed the last people who would ever see her out there. It was a small group on their way back down, soaked through with sweat and plainly done for the day. They stopped her and told her the truth, that it was hotter than anything worth it up top, that big clouds were already stacking up to the south, and that they had cut their own trip short and were getting themselves out while they still could. They told her, in plain words, that she should turn around too. This was not a couple of nervous beginners either. By their own account, they were experienced desert hands who did this kind of thing all the time, and even they had looked at the sky and the heat and called it a day. That is the part that should have landed hardest. That the people telling her to quit were exactly the kind of person she thought of herself as. They would later become a huge part of how any of this is even known, because they remembered her clearly, a cheerful, confident young woman filming as she climbed, who thanked them for the heads up, told them she was close, and had come too far to quit, and kept going up as they made their way down. When they heard, days later, that a woman had gone missing on that route, they came forward on their own, and the time and place where they had crossed paths with her gave the search one of its only fixed points. They said afterward that they had gone back and forth about whether to be more forceful, whether they should have flatly refused to let her pass, and that they have had to make peace with the fact that you cannot save someone who has already decided they are the exception. In a clip she filmed not long after passing them, Kayla is breathing hard, sweat running down her face, saying that a group just tried to talk her into turning back, but that quitting has never really been her style. She holds the camera out at the country shimmering in the heat all around her and tells her followers that this right here is the exact thing that separates the people who actually finish from the people who always find an excuse. I still can't wrap my head around how many separate times she was told to stop. Not a vague little sign that she could pretend not to see, told out loud by real people standing right in front of her. The warnings did not even stop once she was alone. Kayla still had a thin thread of cell signal for part of the climb, and her friend, watching the forecast back home in town and growing more and more worried, texted her about it. The friend told her a severe storm was popping up on the radar right over that part of the forest and begged her to head back down before it hit. It was the last real back and forth the two of them would ever have. Her friend's texts were blunt and scared, that there was a serious storm building right over that part of the forest, and that she needed to get down, now, not soon, now. Kayla wrote back that she could see a few clouds, but that she was basically at the top already, that she would tag the overlook, grab her shots, and be moving back down inside 20 minutes, and that she would text the moment she was back at the car. She told her friend, gently, that she worried too much. That was the last message her friend would get from her for a very long time. Even alone, she was still being warned, and that's the part that scares me. Her friend sat a town away, watching the storm crawl across the screen, begging her to run, and she still thought she was fine. She did reach the overlook, and by everything she filmed up there, it was exactly what she had come for. There is footage, recovered from her phone long afterward, of her at the high point, with the whole desert rolled out behind her, turning in a slow circle, breathing hard and grinning, calling it the hardest one on the list so far and worth every step. And then, instead of doing the thing she had just promised her friend she would do, she stayed. She filmed more. She sat down and took it in. She was already low on water by then, down to the last of what she had carried up, and behind her, in shot after shot, you can watch the clouds she had been warned about all morning, stacking into something enormous and dark and close. Anyone who knows that country, watching that footage now, feels their stomach drop, because her window to get down safely was closing fast while she framed one more shot. She spent what little time she had left on content. In her last clip from the top, Kayla is still smiling, telling her followers that this is the best one on the whole challenge so far, and that she cannot believe she almost let a few strangers talk her out of it. Off to one side of the frame, the sky is already the wrong color, a deep bruised gray moving in fast. She does not mention it even once. She is looking at the view, not the weather. I need you to realize this before we go on. She already made it, and she accomplished everything she came all this way for. But reaching that top was never going to be the hardest part. By the time Kayla finally packed up and started down, she was late, she was low on water, and the storm was right on top of her. The wind came up first, then the lightning, and then the rain, hard and sudden the way it only falls out here in the summer. She was caught out on exposed rock in about the worst possible place to be in a lightning storm, and that is when she made the decision that ties this entire story together. Instead of staying on the long, open, marked way she had come up, she dropped down off the side of it into a drainage, a dry wash that cut straight down the slope and looked like a faster, lower way out of the lightning and the heat. It was the one thing every single sign at that trailhead had warned her not to do. It was the washed out ground the advisory had flagged. It was the flash flood ground. It was the exact danger she had filmed herself laughing about that very morning. In fairness to her, in that moment, it probably felt like the smart call. She was exposed to lightning on open rock, she was overheating, and the drainage looked like the fastest line down and out of it. Every instinct screaming at her to get low and get down was right about the lightning and catastrophically wrong about the water. It is the kind of call that looks foolish written down and felt completely reasonable in the moment. Cold rain stinging her skin, thunder overhead, the marked route a long exposed slog, and the wash a quick shaded line down. She took the danger she could see over the one she could not. This is the choice I keep thinking about, and it's not the late start or the water. The moment she stepped down into that wash, every warning from that morning became the ground under her feet. She could not have known how much rain had already fallen higher up the drainage, because the storm that fed the flood was not even directly over her, and that is precisely what makes these floods so deadly. The wash she climbed down into was dry when she stepped into it. A few minutes later, it was not. Investigators believe she was already well down inside it when the water arrived, a surge of brown water and mud and debris that filled the narrow channel in seconds. She got out. The disturbed soil along the bank suggested she had climbed out of the wash as it flooded, which took more strength and luck than most people would ever have had in them. But the flood took her pack with it as it went, and with her pack went nearly all of her remaining water. The examination later found injuries consistent with a hard fall on that rock, which fits exactly what it takes to fight your way out of a flooding channel. And now she was in the worst spot yet, stranded on the far side of a wash that had suddenly become a river, cut off from her only way back, hurt, almost completely out of water as the storm slid off to the east and the oppressive desert heat slowly returned. The first message Kayla tried to send after the flood, one of several that would never go through, told her friend that something had gone badly wrong. She wrote that she was okay but shaken, that she had lost her pack in a flash flood, that she had almost no water left, and that she was stuck on the wrong side of a wash she could not get back across. She said she was going to wait for the water to drop and then find a way around it. She still, even then, sounded like someone who fully believed she was going to make it out of this. At some point, she tried to send one more update, and it stuck and failed like all the rest. In it, she told her friend that she was not doing well, that it was so hot she could not think straight, and that if she did not text again soon, her friend should please call for help and tell them roughly where she had gone. It was a clear-headed, responsible message, and it never reached a single living soul. What happened after that is not really a mystery, because the desert does the same thing to people caught out in it with no water almost every time. In heat like that, with nothing left to drink, the body simply cannot keep up any longer, and sweating alone is no longer enough to keep it cool. Most people first develop heat exhaustion, the weakness and the pounding head and the dizziness and the cramping. Then, as it tips over into full heat stroke, the real damage moves to the brain. Confusion sets in early, thinking gets slow and muddled, judgment falls apart, coordination goes, and people in that state very often make strange, poor decisions with no idea at all that they are doing it. From the way she was later found, it looks like Kayla did the sensible thing and tried to wait it out, wedged into what little shade a low ledge of rock could offer. It simply was not enough. The wash that had nearly drowned her 1 hour had also cut off her only path home. She spent her last hours soaked from the flood, then baking in the heat, hurt and out of water, waiting on a rescue that no one had been told to send. That's just so brutal, it leaves me speechless. She was found 5 days after anyone had last heard from her, well off the marked route, down near the wash that had trapped her, tucked into the poor shade of the same ledge where she had tried to wait it out. No one had worried at first, because she often went quiet for a day while she drove home and edited, so it was only when she missed work that her friend, the same one who had begged her to turn around, raised the alarm, and by then it was already far too late. The search, once it started, was led by the Gila County Sheriff's Office with the Tonto National Forest assisting, and the thing that finally broke it open was her car, found sitting right there at the trailhead, which let searchers pull landmarks out of her posted videos and narrow miles of empty backcountry down to the drainage below the overlook. Her phone was recovered with her, and even though the battery had been dead for days, examiners were able to pull her footage and several unsent draft messages off of it. The medical examiner determined the cause of death was environmental hyperthermia caused by heat exposure, with dehydration a major factor, most likely on that first afternoon, and documented injuries consistent with a fall. And that really is how all of this is known. None of it is guesswork. It comes from her own recovered footage and draft messages, from the Gila County investigation and the medical examiner, from the weather warnings still sitting on public record, and from the living people who tried to stop her, the volunteer at the trailhead, the group who passed her and later came forward, and the friend on the other end of those texts, the one who raised the alarm and has been telling Kayla's story ever since. In the time since, her family and that friend have tried to turn the worst thing that ever happened to them into something that might spare somebody else's daughter, and they keep coming back to the boring rules that never once make for a good video, respecting a heat warning and a flash flood watch instead of filming a joke about them, honoring an advisory sign because it is almost always there for a very real reason, carrying far more water than you think you could ever need, and turning back the moment it runs low, never dropping into a wash when there is a storm anywhere in the sky, and telling one trusted person your exact route and the time you plan to be back. One of the final draft messages recovered from her phone, never delivered, was only a few words, just that she was so hot, that she was so sorry, and that she just wanted to come home. None of it will bring her back, but it might, on some other blazing afternoon, be the one thing that turns the next stubborn, capable, determined person back toward the trailhead while there is still time. None of this had to happen, and that's the most frustrating part about this whole thing. She was among the most capable people out there, warned again and again, and she still decided the warnings couldn't apply to her.